Hello, welcome back, and I hope you didn't have any problem submitting your practice 1 and 2 for this section. I'm gonna just quickly go over it to make sure if you have any question about that. They're very similar to practice 1 and 2. So let's go ahead and do the addition property. We always have to do addition property first and then multiplication property. So -3, because at opposite of +3 is -3. And remember the equality sign in here, so the other side would be on this side. Now we're going to do it again in vertical format, and I would end up with 5x doesn't have any like terms, so I would get 5x. A +3 and -3, they're like terms, you get 0. And then I get equal. Now, a -18 and -3 would be -21. Let's write it again, 5x equals to -21. The next step is to just do the multiplication property. So we have to divide both sides by -5. Divide both sides by +5 because the coefficient is +5. So you divide both sides by +5. Again, if the coefficient is positive, divide by positive to make it 1. If it's negative, divide by negative. In this case, divide by +5. That's going to give us 1x. So I'll put 1x equals -21 divided by 5. Of course, 1 times x is just x, so we don't really need to leave the 1. We simplify that to x. This ended up to be a fraction, and we have to make sure it's in reduced form. It is, because 5 and 21 don't have a common factor. Therefore, you should leave it in fraction form, because that's actually exact value. If they want you to change it to decimal, they will mention it. So when it's nothing is mentioned, that means leave it in fraction reduced form. Same thing in here for the next practice. We have to use addition and multiplication property for equalities. But before we do that, we notice that there are two terms which have a variable term x in there. So we have to make sure they're on the same side. We can't combine them at this point because they're not on the same side. And it would be better to keep everything on the left side for these problems. So I would subtract 2x, and I have to do it on the other side as well. And remember, identify where are the two sides. The sides are separated by this equality sign. On the left side, a -2x, so we can combine these and we get 0. On the left side, when you have 6x, we should align -2x with 6x, because 8 and 2x are not like terms. So we should align the like terms. So that should be good. Now we're ready to do this. This doesn't have any like terms, so we're going to leave it as it is. But 6x minus 2x would be +4x. We combine those, and that's +8, and then equals. Now these two are combined. When they combine, they're opposite. You get 0 minus 8. The next step is to, first let me write it down. The next step is to use the addition property again. So we used it once in here we're going to use it again because we need to move 8 to the other side. One more time, we have to remember that opposite of 8 is -8. This is one side. The other side, we should do the same thing. And when we do that, again, if I want to do the addition in a vertical format, this doesn't have any like terms, that goes down. So I'm going to write it down. 4x doesn't have any like terms. A +8 and -8 vertically, you get 0. Equality sign. A -8 and -8 is -16. I'm going to write it down again. 4x equals -16. So it's time to do multiplication property. Again, remember to divide both sides by coefficient of x, which is +4. So divide by +4 on both sides. 1x is just x. -16 divided by 4 is -4. So that should be the answer. Okay, if you want to pause the video to make sure you check it, and when you're comfortable with that, we can move on to the next objective. Okay, now that we have seen a few examples for solving linear equations, we're gonna look at the techniques, steps for solving a linear equation. They're listed in here. Step 1, remove any parentheses using distributive property. The previous examples, we didn't have parentheses, so we didn't even have to worry about the step 1. But in this problem, down here, example 3, we have parentheses. So we're going to apply step 1 and then we move on to step 2. For distributive property, you can see that I have to only multiply -3 inside these parentheses. So that's the part that I have to distribute. So I'm going to rewrite everything else like 12 minus 2x. Then when I distribute that, I'll leave it with a different color. -3x, -6 equals so that's all I needed to distribute. -3x, -6 is the result. On the right side, I'm going to leave it as it is at this point, and I'll simplify it when we get to the next step. Okay, so we did the step 1, which was this step. I put a check mark. So that was remove any parentheses. The next step is, this is the next step. Combine like terms on each side. So pay attention to this part. It says combine the like terms on each side of the equation. So let's focus on the left side. On the left side, I have like terms. Let's write it down, 12. Then I have -6. These are like terms. And then I have, actually, yeah, that should be good. Then I have -2x. And then -3x. So I use the same color kind of. So okay, on the right side, I'm going to put 4x and negative x next to each other. Those are like terms. 12 is just going to be by itself. Now, on the left side, a positive 12, negative 6 is going to be positive 6. The negative 2x and negative 3x combined, you get negative 5x. On the right side, if positive 4x and negative 1x is going to give us 3x plus 12. Now, I'm not going to write this in here to make sure you understand this part. Negative 4x minus x is like 4x minus x is the same as 4x minus 1x. So if I want to combine those like terms, it's like 4 minus 1, because we're using distributive property in reverse. 4 minus 1 is 3, so that's really 3x. So that's why I have 3x in here when I combine them. Then let me move up a little bit higher. Now I'm going to write, now we're ready. Let me show you back in here. We finish step 2, combine like terms on each side. What about the step 3? Use the addition property of equality to get all variables on one side and all constants on the other side. And remember, we always use addition property, and then multiplication property would be the last step. So let's focus on addition property. And so we did these 2 steps. Now for addition property, we could either add 5x to both sides, so we could keep the x's on the right side. This way our coefficient of x is going to be positive. Or we could subtract 3x and leave it on the left side, and the coefficient would be negative. Either way is fine. You could use either way. I'll do it by adding positive 5x, because this way I have one less step. Add 5x. But again, on the other side, you have to combine, align it with the like terms. So I'm adding 5x to both sides. Then let's add them vertically. When we add vertically, again, 6 doesn't have any like terms, that goes down. Vertically, you add these, you get 0. Put the equality sign, that goes down. Then this goes down, a positive 3 and positive 5 is positive 8x. And this one goes down, positive 12. So anything which doesn't have like term goes down, those like terms combine, equality sign bring it down, and so that's called a vertical addition. Then I'm going to be rewriting this again. Remember, we're still working on this step that we're going to move all the constants to the other side. So keep all the constants on the other side. That means we have to keep 12 on the left side this time. So opposite of 12 is negative 12. Again, align it in here. And then negative 12. Actually, let me rewrite it so we have more room. Okay, so I'll write it in here. negative 12. Again, be very careful. If you're doing negative 12 to this side, don't forget the other side is 6. So do the same thing to the other side. Once we do that, then we can do a vertical addition. These two, that gives us negative 6. Bring the equality sign down. This one doesn't have any like terms. Bring it down. A positive 12, negative 12 is 0. So we get negative 6 equals to 8x. 8x plus 0 is 8x. It would be okay if you write it like this. That would be easier to work with. So instead of saying negative 6 equals 8x, you can say 8x equals negative 6. Don't change anything. Just rewrite it. Then I know that I need to make this coefficient 1. So divide both sides by 8. By doing that, you have 1x, 1 times x, which is just x. Now again, this one is a fraction. It's negative because the signs are different. But 6 and 8, they have a common factor of 2. So 2, you get 3 over 4 after you simplify. So that should be the answer. Check it to make sure this is true. There's you can check it back in the equation. And you can pause it if you want to check your answer, to see if you have any question. Let me know. Okay, so the next one is solving problems. A chunky cheeseburger contains 12 more grams of fat than a happy hamburger. Find the number of grams of fat in each sandwich. If there are a total of 98 grams of fat in the two sandwiches. With the problems, like word problems or application problems, you may have to read it a few times to totally understand it. So if you want to pause it, read it a few times, that would be a great idea. Okay, so hopefully you pause the video and you read it and you understand the situation. Now that you're back, let's see how we could do this problem. So we have two different kind of hamburger. One of them is chunky cheeseburger. The other one is happy burger. So for chunky cheeseburger, and for happy hamburger, they have given us some information about how much fat they have, but not the exact value. Kind of the relationship. For example, they're saying that chunky cheeseburger has 12 more grams of fat than happy cheeseburger, hamburger. But they didn't tell us how many grams of fat each one has. It's just we know chunky cheeseburgers have more fat, 12 grams more. That's all the information we have. But we have one more information also, that total grams of fat for both sandwiches are 98 gram for total. And that's, these two informations are enough to answer the question. It says find the number of grams of fat in each sandwich. So with this kind of problems, you have to find out what is given, what is unknown. So unknown, and the unknown is usually what they're asking you to find, is amount of fat in each kind. So let's write it down. Amount of fat, and it's in gram, of course, grams. For Chuck E. Cheeseburger, I'll just put CC for Chuck E. Cheeseburger. And then the other one, let's do a different color. This one is also grams for Happy Hamburger. These are unknown. Now, if you have two unknowns and you say, okay, well, I need to find both, you can you may be tempted to say, okay, one of them is X, use a variable for them, the other one is Y, which is fine. But at this point, we haven't learned how to solve equations when we have two variables in there. And if you have two unknowns, we have to find a way to use only one variable. So the best way to do that is to choose one of them X, but the other one in terms of X. So how do we do that? Since they're saying that Chuck E. Cheeseburger has 12 more grams than fat than Happy Hamburger, so let's say Happy Hamburger has X grams of fat, so that's X grams. Then if this is X grams, the Chuck E. Cheeseburger has 12 grams more. But this is, since this is X, we don't know what it is, so we call it X. Then Chuck E. Cheeseburger has 12 more, and we have to write it as 12 more means add 12 to X. So for example, if the Happy Hamburger has 10 grams of fat, then Chuck E. Cheeseburger would have 10 plus 12, which is 22. We don't know what it is, so we're trying to figure it out. But to be able to write it as expression is the technique that you're learning right now. Now that we wrote our, again, we have two unknowns, but we only use one equation. Sorry, we only use one variable, only X. So X for Happy Hamburger, the fat for Happy Hamburger, and X plus 12. These are called expressions in terms of X. So what's the next step? For the next step, I need to write the equation. And where do I get that equation? Remember, we had two sentences, two information was given in verbal. One of them was the first one. We used the first one already. We use that for writing our legends. Now, the next equation comes, the next information comes from the next sentence. And that tells us the total fat in both sandwiches is 98 grams. So what that means? That means the fat from use a different color. Amount of fat from chunky cheeseburger plus fat from Happy Hamburger total together is 98 gram. This is what the sentence says, but we wrote it in terms of an equation. But we already have defined fat from chunky cheeseburger is x plus 12. So this is x plus 12. Also, we have fat from happy hamburger, that's x. That's this one. By doing that, we are really writing an equation in terms of x only, which is the topic for this section, because we know how to solve, we learn how to solve linear equations in one variable, and that's exactly what we have. So the next step is to solve this equation. So again, remember the steps we were talking about earlier. For step 1, remove any parentheses using distributive property. So I'm going to use that in here. To remove that, because there is nothing in front of it, it's really 1, nothing will change. So let's write it down. X, we'll use a different color. So when you remove the parentheses using distributive property, then the next step would be combine like terms on each side. On the left side, we have 1x plus 1x, so that makes it 2x plus 12, because we're going to combine these two x. And then on the right side, we don't need to do anything, it's just 98. And again, we're moving to the next step, that we're using addition property. Always use addition property first before you do multiplication property, because it makes it much easier. So I'm going to do that, and I will write it as to do the addition property. Let's see if I have some room in here. 2x, I'll just put it in here, minus 12 subtract 12, this color. Again, the two sides are separated by equality signs, so this is the other side. And when you do that, one more time, I'm going to do a vertical addition, and that leaves me with 2x doesn't have any like terms, so that would be just 2x brings it down. This would give me 0 because they're opposite. Bring the equality sign down. Now these are not the same sign, so you subtract and you would get 6, 8, and it's positive. And eventually, now we have to use multiplication properties. So divide both sides by 3. So I'll write it in here. Sorry, I said 3, I meant 2. Let's see if I can get. Divide both sides by 2 because the coefficient is 2. That leaves us with x equals 2 goes into 86, which is 43. Again, check your answer by plugging it back in there to see if it's good. But let's see what this one really is. X is the amount of fat for happy hamburger. So we have to write it down. I'll write it in this corner. So for happy hamburger, 43 gram fat, because remember this is for happy hamburger. I kind of messed it up. Okay, this is H. Okay, for H is 43. What about for chunky? For chunky is 12 more, so I put CC 43 plus 12, which is gonna be 55 grams of fat. Now let's check it. If you add this, so we should get 98. And it is 98 because 43 plus 55 is 98. So that looks good. Always check it and always leave the answer like in verbal at the end. So you have to say happy hamburger has 43 grams of fat. A chunky cheeseburger has 55 grams of fat. Don't give the answer as X. Just write it down in phrases. Okay, so I have practice 3 and practice 4, very similar. One is similar to example 3, and practice 4 is another application problem, and it has to do with the rectangle. You have to remember the formula. I will just write it in here, and then you can work on this yourself and submit it, and I'll check your answer after you submit it. So let me just draw a picture in here to remind you about this. Anytime you have a rectangle, if you want to find the perimeter, if this is W width and this is length, because these two are the same, so perimeter means you measure the distance around the shape. So in this case we have length plus length, two of them. We have width plus width, two of them. So you can simplify it as 2 times length plus 2 times width. So go ahead and use this formula and read this problem and try to see if you can submit it, and I'll check your answer when you're done.